They say the darkness holds no power, that it's just a place where light fades away. But some places defy explanation, standing on the edge of reason and reality, where shadows cling to the walls and whispers never seem to fade. Picture a house, secluded from the world yet watching it, standing stoic and unyielding against the pressing silence of a rainy night. Rainwater trickles down cracked windows, and dim light bulbs flicker within, struggling to pierce through a darkness that feels heavy. There's a cold draft creeping under the doors, sinking deep into the bones of anyone who dares to stay too long. It's a chill that bites, that settles in your skin, and yet you feel as though you're not alone. This is the kind of place that draws you in with unanswered questions, like the house where George and Kathy Lutz took their first steps as a new family, unaware that they were stepping into someone else's past, a past drenched in blood and whispers. But soon, the Lutz family would hear voices they couldn't explain. Unseen eyes seemed to follow them from room to room, and the air itself felt thick, suffocating, as if pushing them out. And in another time, in a quiet stretch of Tennessee, the Bell family found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't reason with. It started with scratches in the walls, quiet at first, but growing louder, insistent, as if demanding to be heard. Then came the voice. A whisper, just one voice in the beginning, calling out names, mocking, taunting. But it wasn't long before that voice became more than words, before it began to reach out, touching, clawing, filling every corner of the Bell home with a terror that refused to be ignored. And then, as if dolls needed a place in this nightmare, there's Annabelle, a doll that looked innocent at first, small, delicate, a harmless gift. But this doll had a mind of its own. Its eyes seemed to follow people in the room, its hands not quite where they'd been left. And when she began leaving messages, scratching words onto paper, no one could explain it. No one wanted to believe it. Yet one by one, those who came close to Annabelle found themselves marked by something that could not be seen, but never forgotten. These stories live on not because they happened once, but because they refuse to fade no matter how many years have passed. The Amityville house still stands, carrying the echoes of the Lutz family's terror. The Bell Witch haunts the very soil of Tennessee, her voice lost to time but her presence still felt. And Annabelle waits, encased in glass, a mere doll, or so it seems. So as we step into these stories tonight, ask yourself, what would you do if you found yourself there, in the silence, with only shadows and memories to keep you company? If you felt the touch of something unseen? These aren't just stories, they're warnings. The world of paranormal encounters is vast, layered, and elusive. Some stories float just on the surface, those we've all heard of, that slip easily into conversations around a campfire or a late-night drive. But below that surface, there are layers, each darker than the last, where the stories become more twisted, more frightening, and harder to dismiss. Tonight we journey into the shadows, following tales of fear that linger just beneath the surface. Picture an iceberg, a massive structure of hidden depths. On the surface you see only a glimpse. At the very top are cases like Amityville, the Bell Witch, and Annabelle the doll. These are the ones everyone knows, the haunted houses, cursed families, and possessed objects that have lingered in our collective nightmares for decades. But these are only the first layer. The cases that have made headlines, inspired movies, and left the world wondering if there really is something beyond what we can see. But deeper down, where the light barely reaches, there are stories even darker, more terrifying, waiting to be uncovered. And with each layer we descend, we stray further from reality, into something unexplainable. Amityville. It's a name that alone brings chills. What George and Kathy Lutz experienced in that quiet, suburban house was the beginning of a horror that would grip the world. They lived in a place where the walls held secrets, where every creak, every shadow seemed to whisper a warning. But what about those that came before them? How many souls passed through those walls? and why did some of them choose to stay? Amityville may sit at the top of this iceberg, but it's only the beginning. And then there's the Bell Witch. In the early 1800s, the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee, found themselves the target of something ancient, relentless. Whispers at night, scratches that appeared on the walls, and then, even worse, attacks that left bruises on skin. But the Bell Witch wasn't just a story of a ghost or an apparition. It was something alive in the shadows, something with a voice that laughed, that cursed, that hated. The Bell Witch doesn't merely linger on the surface of this iceberg. She claws her way into the minds of anyone who dares to remember. And then we reach Annabelle, a doll. Simple, small, and unassuming, yet it holds an aura so dark it had to be locked away, shielded from those who might be tempted to come too close. Imagine an object that carries a force so powerful that its touch alone could mark you. Annabelle's story has woven itself into the fabric of paranormal lore, a reminder that sometimes the most innocent things harbor the greatest darkness. But these stories, as terrifying as they are, sit at the top of the iceberg, drawing us in, inviting us to wonder, to speculate. Because what lies below is something far darker: stories with fewer witnesses, accounts that slipped through the cracks of history, leaving only a handful to remember. And if the top of the iceberg holds tales as chilling as Amityville, the Bell Witch, and Annabelle, one can only imagine what the shadows below conceal. Tonight we'll journey down into that darkness together. Hold on tight, because this iceberg of fear runs deeper than you could ever imagine. It was November 13th, 1974 in Amityville, New York. On that night, Ronald DeFeo Jr. brutally murdered 6 members of his family as they slept in their beds. The horror that followed was unlike anything seen before. By 1975, the house stood eerily silent, until George and Kathy Lutz arrived with their children. They thought they were moving into a dream home, but soon the walls themselves would speak of its dark past. For the Lutz family, it began with small, strange happenings, doors opening on their own, an unsettling chill in the air, cold spots in places that defied explanation. But as the days passed, things grew darker. George would wake at exactly 3:15 a.m. every morning, the supposed time of the DeFeo murders, and then there was the green slime, oozing from walls, coating floors, appearing from nowhere. Their dream home had become a nightmare. Then there were the voices. Kathy would hear them first, a faint whisper, almost a warning, though she couldn't make out the words. But it didn't end there. As days turned to weeks, the family felt a weight pressing down on them, as if they weren't alone, as if someone or something wanted them out. When paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were called in, they claimed the house held an inhuman presence. Their investigation led them to one conclusion: whatever haunted the Amityville house wanted to drive the Lutz family to madness or worse. Over the years, the Amityville haunting has drawn endless debate. Some believe the family was targeted by an evil that lingered after the DeFeo murders, an energy too dark to fade away. Others claim the Lutz family fabricated the entire ordeal to profit from the house's infamy. Yet even after the Lutzes fled, the house remained strange. Skeptics have tried to dunk it, but there are still witnesses, people who entered that house and swear they felt an overwhelming presence, a weight that's hard to explain. Whatever truth lies within those walls, it's a story that will forever be part of the paranormal iceberg. But what about you? Would you believe the voices, the cold spots, the feeling of being watched? Or would you brush it off, convincing yourself that everything has an explanation? How far would you go before you couldn't ignore the sins? The year was 1817. and Tennessee's Red River area was wild, sparsely populated, and as isolated as one could imagine. Amid the winding dirt paths and thick forests stood a small homestead, a modest house and farm belonging to the Bell family. John Bell Sr., a man respected in his community, led a quiet life with his wife, Lucy, and their children. But something was stirring on that land, something that had watched them in silence, waiting. In American folklore, the story of the Bell Witch stands as one of the most chilling and perplexing hauntings. Unlike other spirits that haunt places, this entity seemed to target John Bell himself, a force that refused to let him rest. It started slowly, with sounds that could easily be dismissed at first. Scratching sounds in the night, knocks that would echo through the quiet house, taps on the windows that left no trace. These were just the beginning, whispers of what was to come. What began as subtle taps and scratches soon grew into something far more sinister. The sounds became louder, more forceful, shaking the walls, as though something or someone wanted to be heard. And then, the whispers began, low, guttural, and unsettling. They would drift through the rooms late at night, calling names, mocking, taunting. At times, the whispers would grow so loud it seemed as if the walls themselves were alive. But the Bell Witch's presence was more than just a sound. It had a will, a force that went beyond words. Soon, the haunting turned physical. John Bell's daughter, Betsy, would awaken in the middle of the night, her face pale with terror, clutching bruises that appeared out of nowhere. She'd been struck, as if by an invisible hand, her skin marked by something no one could see. The family could no longer ignore the malevolence that surrounded them. As the Bell family grew more desperate, the entity became more aggressive. It would pull at their hair, slap their faces, and hurl objects across the room. Betsy, the youngest and perhaps the most vulnerable, bore the brunt of these attacks. Her cries echoed in the night, mingling with the sounds of something laughing, a laughter that had no source, no face, yet seemed to fill the house. But the Bell Witch's fury wasn't solely focused on the family. It began to speak, declaring its hatred for John Bell Sr. by name, cursing him, promising that he would die. The entity's words, filled with venom, haunted him, and the once strong John Bell began to weaken, as though the very life was being drained from him by the force's presence. The family's home, once a place of peace, had transformed into a prison of fear. They sought help, but no one could explain what was happening. Even when neighbors came to witness the strange events, the force would make itself known, objects moving on their own, unearthly sounds filling the air, and the mocking, taunting voice that seemed to take pleasure in their terror. And then, just when they thought it might end, it didn't. The Bell Witch had more to say, more torment to inflict. The family's nightmare was far from over. Over the years, many have tried to explain what the Bell family endured. Some say it was a malevolent spirit, a force tied to the land itself, angry and unyielding. Others claim the entity was the vengeful spirit of Kate Batts, a local woman rumored to have cursed John Bell after a bitter dispute. Was it a spirit, driven by vengeance, exacting retribution against John Bell and his family? Or was there something deeper, something darker that defies explanation, a force that simply exists to torment and haunt? What do you think? Could the Bell Witch have been a vengeful ghost? Or was there something far more ancient and sinister at play in the shadows of the Bell family's isolated farm? Share your thoughts if you dare. Not all evil hides in shadows, nor does it always take a form we expect. Sometimes it wears an innocent face, a mask to deceive, to draw us in. And that's how it was with Annabelle. To anyone else, she was just a doll, a simple Raggedy Ann toy given to a young nursing student named Donna in the early 1970s. Donna, unaware of the doll's sinister nature, accepted Annabelle as a gift from her mother, placing it on her bed as an innocent decoration. But soon Donna and her roommate Angie began noticing unsettling changes. At first they'd find Annabelle in different positions, as though she'd shifted slightly, her limbs moved. Then, it became something much harder to ignore. The doll would appear in different rooms, sometimes standing, other times slumped in a way that seemed almost deliberate. Then came the messages. Scrawled on pieces of parchment paper, words would appear, "Help me, help Lou." But the women had no parchment paper, nor had they seen anyone enter their home. Whoever or whatever was writing these messages, it was coming from Annabelle, they believed. Soon, fear turned to dread as the atmosphere in their apartment thickened, and the once harmless doll took on a sinister presence. Seeking answers, Donna and Angie reached out to a priest, who in turn contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators. The Warrens knew well that the simplest objects could sometimes hold the darkest forces, and as they examined Annabelle, they uncovered something even they hadn't expected. According to the Warrens, Annabelle wasn't merely haunted by a ghost. They believed the doll was being used as a conduit by an inhuman spirit, a demonic force seeking to possess or harm those around it. The doll itself wasn't possessed, but was merely a vessel, a shell through which this malevolent entity could interact with the living world. During their investigation, the Warrens uncovered chilling evidence of Annabelle's influence. They documented unexplained claw marks on those who came too close. Visitors reported a suffocating sense of dread when near the doll, an overwhelming feeling that they were being watched. And there were more physical attacks, including one incident where a man was thrown against the wall after taunting Annabelle. It was clear to the Warrens that Annabelle could not be left unguarded. They confined her in a glass case within their occult museum, believing that it was the only way to contain the dark force attached to her. But even behind glass, the doll's influence remains. Since her confinement, Annabelle has remained under strict lock and key, but visitors to the museum still speak of feeling her gaze upon them, sensing a quiet menace that hangs in the air. The Warrens advised anyone who saw her to treat her with caution, to never underestimate the force within. Even locked away, Annabelle's presence endures, a silent, watching danger behind the glass. Annabelle's story isn't just a tale of a doll, nor is it merely a haunting. It's a warning, a reminder that sometimes evil wears an innocent face. Perhaps it's simply waiting for the moment someone lets down their guard.
Help me!
What do you believe? Could an ordinary object, something as innocent as a doll, hold such terrifying power? Or is it simply a story, crafted from fear and fueled by imagination? Share your thoughts, and remember, not every danger is visible. Sometimes it's the things that seem harmless that are the most dangerous. 3 stories, each more terrifying than the last. And yet, these tales are only a glimpse into a vast, dark unknown, a mere scratch on the surface of what we might call the paranormal iceberg. In Amityville, we saw a family torn apart by fear, a home where dark memories left a stain that could never be erased. The Lutzes endured chilling phenomena that defied explanation, forced to flee from forces that may never be understood. Was it the echoes of a tragic past, or something darker clinging to that house, lurking in the shadows? Then, there was the Bell Witch, a voice that haunted the Bell family with relentless cruelty, leaving a father broken and a family scarred. Whatever haunted them seemed fueled by an intense personal hatred, as though its vengeance knew no bounds. But was it the spirit of a wronged neighbor, or an entity older, something that has long haunted the land, waiting for its moment to emerge. And finally, Annabelle, a doll that should have been nothing more than cloth and stuffing, but instead became a vessel of malevolence, a magnet for dark energy. For years, the Warrens kept her locked away, warning all who came close that her innocent face hid a force that could never be tamed. Could such power truly reside within a simple object, or does she draw her strength from those who dare to believe? These three stories, terrifying on their own, reveal a deeper question, one that haunts each corner of our world, each whisper in the dark, each fleeting shadow. Is there something about these places, these objects, that truly defies the laws of our reality? Or are we, as humans, simply drawn to fear, looking for darkness in places we cannot explain? We've only touched the top of the iceberg. Beneath these well-known tales lie countless stories, encounters with forces so dark they may never see the light. But for those willing to look, hit the notification bell and subscribe to this channel. The truth is there, hidden, waiting to be discovered. Now we turn to you. What do you believe? Are these tales the remnants of a dark history or reflections of something even more sinister? Have you, or someone you know, ever faced the unexplainable, felt the presence of something that shouldn't be there? Share your thoughts, your stories in the comments below. And if these tales have left you with more questions than answers, then join us again. Because the world of the paranormal is far from empty, and the stories, they never truly end. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay with us as we explore deeper into the creepy unknown. These stories are more than mere memories. They are encounters, lingering, bound not by time but by place, left to haunt the shadows of where they once began. The Amityville house, the Bell family farm, Annabelle and her glass prison, they are all pieces of a puzzle we may never solve, threads woven into the fabric of the unexplained. For those who search, the answers may be closer than we dare to imagine. But beware, for sometimes the very act of looking may open doors that were meant to remain closed. Remember, these stories live on not just in memory, but perhaps in the places they first began.